My sister-in-law didn't just ruin my wedding dress. She tried to steal my life, and my husband used her college fund to destroy her alibi. The human mind is a fascinating, terrifying thing. It can build fortresses of logic to protect itself from the unthinkable, dismissing glaring red flags as simple misunderstandings. For me, 27-year-old Clara, that fortress began to crumble on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoon, not with a bang but with a push notification from my banking app. Clara, had always considered myself a good judge of character. I was a curator at a small city museum, my life dedicated to authenticating the past, to spotting the subtle forgeries in brushstrokes and documents. It's a cruel irony that I missed the masterpiece of deception being painted right in front of me within my own family. My husband, Adam, 29, was my anchor. A software architect, his world was one of binary truth, ones and zeros, clean code and logical outcomes. He was the stable, generous center of his family, a role he'd shouldered since childhood. With a 10-year age gap between him and his sister, Becca, 19, he was more a father than a brother. Their parents, Mill and Phil, were kind-hearted but financially hapless, their lives a constant cycle of barely managed debt and optimistic denial. Adam's success was their pride and their safety net. And his greatest act of love for Becca was the $50,000 college fund he'd painstakingly built for her, a treasure he guarded and dispensed semester by semester, directly to the university. Becca was the wild card. Pretty, charismatic, and impulsively charming, she floated through life on a cloud of second chances and tearful apologies. Fender bender? Dad, I'm so sorry, the sun was in my eyes. A maxed-out credit card? Mom, it was an emergency, I'll pay you back, I promise. We all enabled it, especially me. I saw her as a project, a little sister I never had. She had a key to our modern minimalist house, a safe haven near her campus where she could study, escape dorm life, and borrow my clothes, always with permission, or so I thought. I'd even shown her how to spot a genuine Art Deco piece from a replica, little knowing she was studying a far more valuable original, my life. The first crack in my reality appeared subtly. The credit card alert for $1,500 at a luxury luggage boutique was easy to dismiss as fraud. I canceled the card, feeling efficient and slightly violated. The customer service agent's mention of a chip and pin transaction was a pebble tossed into the pond of my subconscious, creating ripples I chose to ignore. The next incidents were stranger, more intimate. A call from my gynecologist's office confirming a consultation for a procedure I'd never discussed. A voicemail from a high-end fertility clinic I'd never heard of, addressing me by name and confirming initial tests. These weren't random fraud. They were targeted, invasive probes into my personal life. When my favorite bookstore called about a special order book on quantum mechanics, I went down there. The young clerk's description was unmistakable. Yeah, Clara was in last week. Blonde, super bubbly, said she was prepping for a big trip and needed some heavy reading. I confronted Becca that night over a home-cooked meal, a ritual I cherished. Becca, have you been using my name for things? Like at the bookstore? She didn't even flinch. She rolled her eyes, a picture of exasperated innocence. Ugh, that guy. He totally misheard me. I was talking about you traveling and he just assumed I was you. It was so awkward I didn't want to correct him. Sorry, Clara, it was just easier. She shoveled a forkful of pasta into her mouth. The books for this philosophy class I'm auditing. Super boring. It was a perfectly Becca explanation. Messy, self-serving, but wrapped in a plausible veneer. Adam, sitting across from me, gave a slight shake of his head, a silent signal to let it go. She's just impulsive, honey. You know how she is. But the pebble was now a stone and the ripples were growing. The tsunami hit when Detective Miller called my direct line at the museum. His voice was like gravel, devoid of warmth. Miss Clara Evans? We have a report here from the Four Seasons. You were involved in an altercation last night, became verbally abusive to staff and were escorted out. You left this behind. He read out the last 4 digits of my old cancelled card. I was home with my husband, I stammered, my professional composure shattered. We were watching a documentary on Byzantine art. I can give you his number. I've already spoken to Mr. Evans, Detective Miller replied, his tone implying he heard alibis from loving spouses every day. He confirms your presence. However, the individual at the hotel presented a driver's license with your name and her photograph. The front desk manager is certain. The world tilted. A fake ID? This was no longer a game of mistaken identity. This was a deliberate, malicious campaign. That evening, the air in our home was thick with a new, terrifying fear. Adam held me as I shook, not from anger but from a primal, chilling terror. Someone was out there wearing my face, stealing my name and painting a portrait of me as an unstable, fraudulent woman. It has to be connected to the other things, Adam said, his voice low and steady, though I could feel the tension in his arms. The credit card, the doctor, the bookstore. They're building a profile. But why? I whispered into his shoulder. To ruin my credit? To get me arrested for disorderly conduct? Maybe, Adam said, but his eyes, usually so clear and certain, were clouded with a darker thought he wasn't ready to voice. The turning point, the moment my logical husband saw the binary truth hidden in the chaos, came from his own system. Becca's next semester tuition was due. He'd emailed her twice, then texted. Her replies were uncharacteristically delayed and vague. So swamped with finals, I'll get it soon, promise. Driven by a gut feeling he couldn't ignore, Adam logged into the university's financial portal. He navigated to the billing section. The screen showed a balance of 0 for the upcoming semester. That's impossible, he muttered. The bursar's office is never this fast. A few more clicks brought up the payment history. And there it was, a line item that made the breath catch in his throat. A payment of $15,000, dated 3 weeks prior from the Ether Foundation scholarship disbursement. Since when does Becca have a $15,000 private scholarship? I asked, leaning over his shoulder, a fresh wave of dread washing over me. She doesn't, Adam said, his fingers already flying across the keyboard. And the Ether Foundation? It's a ghost. No digital footprint, no registration. He traced the routing number. It led to a private, boutique bank in Delaware known for its discretion. This isn't a scholarship, Clara, he said, finally turning to look at me. His face was pale. This is a payment. A transfer. She did something, or she agreed to do something, and this is the down payment. The pieces, once scattered and confusing, began to fly together, forming a horrifying image. The fake ID, the medical appointments, the public scene. It wasn't just about framing me. It was about creating a credible double. A shadow Clara with a documented history of financial fraud, medical consultations, and erratic public behavior. And the college fund. I began, my voice trembling. Was the key I had that she didn't know I was using, Adam finished. She needed a large, legitimate-looking influx of cash to pay for something or to flee without us questioning it. Hiding it as a scholarship payment was clever. But she got greedy. She didn't want to wait for my disbursements. She wanted it all at once. What followed was a descent into a shadow world we never knew existed. Adam, with a skill set I found both impressive and frightening, managed to access a backup of Becca's phone. The messages he found there, exchanged with a contact saved as EF, were a cold-blooded blueprint for my destruction. Becca, Phase 1 complete. The financial fraud is established. The card is reported stolen, adding to her instability. If, good. Proceed with the medical and public records. We need a mosaic of incompetence and mental fragility. Becca. The hotel incident is set for tomorrow. The fake ID is perfect. Once that's on record, we move to the final act. The payment needs to clear. EF. The disbursement is processing. Remember, the final transfer of $35,000 is contingent on the successful completion of the gala. No mistakes. The gala. I breathed, my blood turning to ice. The Sterling Foundation Charity Gala. Adam's company was a major sponsor. We were expected to attend in 3 days. It was the social event of our year. Adam scrolled further, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might break. Then he found it. The message that made my world stop. Becca. I have access. The switch will happen during the gala. She'll be incapacitated in her dressing room by 8:30 p.m. I'll be at the head table by 9 p.m. By midnight, I'm on a plane to a non-extradition country. Make sure the money is in the Cayman account. I'm disappearing for good this time. They weren't just framing me. They were going to replace me. The switch. Becca, with her similar build and hair color, planned to drug me, take my place at the gala. A very public event where hundreds of people would see me, acting erratically or simply vanishing, and then she would disappear. I would be left behind, either dead or so thoroughly discredited that no one would believe my story of impersonation. It was a perfect, terrifying crime. We went to Detective Miller with a file of printed messages, bank records, and our terrifying theory. This time he listened intently. The stakes had escalated from identity theft to conspiracy to commit kidnapping and possibly murder. The police moved with swift, silent efficiency. They identified EF as Eric Farrow, a freelance fixer with ties to corporate espionage. His client was the CEO of a rival tech firm, a man locked in a brutal acquisition battle with Adam's company. The plan was to create a massive, destabilizing personal scandal for Adam on the eve of a critical merger, causing his stock to plummet and his leadership to be questioned. The night of the gala was the most terrifying of my life. I dressed in my emerald green gown, my hands steady only through sheer force of will. I wore a tiny wire taped between my shoulder blades, a cold, hard reminder that this was not a performance. It was a trap. Becca arrived, a whirlwind of false excitement, to help me get ready. She was too bright, too effusive. Wow, Clara, you look amazing. Here, I brought champagne to calm our nerves. She poured 2 glasses from a bottle she'd brought, handing one to me. My glass, I noticed, had a tiny, almost imperceptible smudge on the rim. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. Following the police's explicit instructions, I took a small, pretend sip. Oh, it's lovely, I said, then deliberately let my hand tremble, spilling the champagne down the front of my dress. Oh no. My dress. I cried, the genuine distress in my voice masking the calculated act. Clara. You're so nervous. Becca said, her voice a mix of annoyance and something else. Triumph? Here, go quickly, blot it with water in the bathroom. I rushed out, the wire transmitting every sound. As I entered the hallway, I heard her whisper sharp and clear into her phone. It's done. She drank it. The package is secured. The house erupted into controlled chaos. Plainclothes officers who had been hidden in our spare rooms and the garden moved in. I turned from the bathroom door to see Adam, his face a mask of cold fury, standing beside Detective Miller as they entered the living room. Becca was frozen, the phone still in her hand, her glass of champagne untouched. The look on her face was one of pure, unadulterated shock, quickly morphing into a petulant, childish rage. You're ruining everything, she screamed at Adam as an officer read her rights. It was my chance. My life. You always controlled everything with your money, your perfect house, your perfect wife. I was just your pathetic little sister. Well, not anymore. Eric Farah was arrested at the airport, a briefcase full of cash and 2 first-class tickets to Jakarta in his possession. The aftermath was a different kind of hell, one of legal depositions, media scrutiny, and profound emotional wreckage. Adam was a ghost of himself. The sister he had clothed, fed, and funded had been willing to barter his wife's life for a fresh start. He didn't just freeze the college fund. He liquidated it completely, donating every cent to a network of shelters for victims of domestic violence and trafficking. It was his way of severing that tie, of transforming the instrument of her betrayal into a force for good. His parents, Mill and Phil, were initially shattered, then defiant. They cycled through denial. There must be a mistake. Anger. How could you let this happen, Adam? You were supposed to protect her. And finally, a broken, shame-filled acceptance. The family was fractured, perhaps irrevocably. Becca, in a plea deal to avoid a trial that would have exposed her and her co-conspirators to even harsher sentences, confessed to everything. Her motivation was a toxic brew of resentment, entitlement, and a warped desire for freedom. She saw me not as a sister but as an obstacle, and my identity as a commodity she could trade. She is now serving a 12-year sentence in a federal penitentiary. As for me, I am learning to live in a world that feels less safe. I see my therapist twice a week. I changed all the locks. The museum, with its silent, truthful artifacts, has become my sanctuary again. Adam and I are rebuilding, our bond forged anew in the fire of that betrayal. He once bought me a beautiful wedding dress, but what he truly gave me was a partnership strong enough to survive a plot to erase me. The $50,000 was never just money for Becca's future. It was the lure that exposed her darkness, the digital thread my husband pulled to unravel her web, and the final devastating consequence for the sister who tried to steal my life.